Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the Week 9 NFL slate on Draftkings and Yahoo. We're going to take a final look, position by position. I'm going to hit on all the guys that I like at each position, the guys that stand out to me the most, pretty much the players I feel like I'm going to have the most exposure to across all my lineups. I'm not going to talk about every single player on the slate just because I don't want the video to be too long. So I'm mainly going to hit on the guys that I have the most interest in at each position. We will do that for quarterback through tight end. Won't really hit on defense, but quarterback through tight end we'll be sure to talk about. So before we do get started with the video, guys, as always, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like button down below. And if you are new to the channel, be sure to click that subscribe button as well. Click the notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do really enjoy these YouTube videos and if they help you out a lot and you want to get more content from me, I do have stuff available on Patreon. You can check that out, link down below in the description if that does interest you. It is obviously optional, but for those of you that are interested, the Patreon is linked down below in the description. But let's go ahead and take a look at quarterback this week. We will start off at the top. So Patrick Mahomes, our most expensive option on DraftKings. He is $8,100. Looking at Yahoo's pricing, Mahomes actually coming in a little bit cheaper over there, just $36. Fourth most expensive quarterback on Yahoo. So pretty much week in and week out, you can play Patrick Mahomes. Really, there's nothing negative to say about him. The dude just gets it done. I mean, he's only had one bad game this season against Denver when he scored 12 DK points. Other than that game, he's been over 20 DK points in every game so far this season. We know he has a massive ceiling. I mean, this guy has 30, 35-point upside. I really like this game between the Chiefs and the Panthers. I think if the Chiefs can if the Panthers can keep it close, like this game has a lot of shootout potential. We've seen the total rise in this game. It opened at 51. Since then, it's been bet up to 53. Right now, the Chiefs are 10.5-point favorites. My only concern is that the Chiefs maybe get up big and we see them, maybe take their foot off the gas pedal, run the ball a little bit more. But I thought that was going to be the case last week against the Jets. I thought, the Chiefs were going to get up early, kind of run the ball a lot, but that really didn't happen. I mean, Mahomes, I think they won by like 30 points, but Mahomes still threw 5 touchdowns last week, 416 yards. Like, even in a game where they won by, 26 points, Mahomes still threw the ball 42 times. So this is a Chiefs team that we know wants to throw the ball a lot. This is a Panthers defense that has definitely been better than I expected in terms of defending the pass. I mean, they've still been really bad against the run, but they've definitely been better defending, the pass. But that's not going to take me off a guy like Patrick Mahomes. I think he is one of the better pay-up options this week if you can find a way to get him in. I think on Yahoo, that's where I have the most interest in Mahomes, just because he's only $36. He's cheaper than Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, and he's the same price tag as Justin Herbert. I like Mahomes the most on Yahoo. I think, honestly, he's probably going to be the guy I build around in my main lineup. Obviously, I haven't built my main lineup yet, but I feel like I'm most likely going to be on Mahomes. If not Mahomes, then I'm probably going to drop down to like Lamar Jackson, who I think is underpriced. We'll talk about him in a second, but really like Mahomes on Yahoo at $36. On DraftKings, I think he's a really good play as well. It's just a little bit tougher to get him in at $8,100, but I think between like Mahomes, Murray, or Wilson, I do prefer Mahomes there between those three guys. Although I think all three are in play. I mean, Kyler Murray gets the Dolphins, obviously a really good spot. He's been elite this season, giving you such a high floor, and we know Kyler Murray also has a really high ceiling. I mean, there's really nothing negative you can say about Russell Wilson, another guy that's just giving you such a high floor, high ceiling this season. I mean, overall, he's been like the best fantasy QB. Against Buffalo, that's a spot where I still expect Russell Wilson to be able to produce. I mean, he's pretty much been matchup proof this season, so I like all three guys, 7,600 and above. If I can only choose one, though, I think Patrick Mahomes is my preferred option. But then you got Deshaun Watson, Josh Allen. So Josh Allen's a guy that I really like this week at his DraftKings price. I think $7K is just too cheap for Josh Allen when you factor in the matchup at home against the Seahawks. The Seahawks team been really bad against the pass this season. This is a team you can definitely throw on. They've allowed the most passing yards per game. We're seeing a really high total in this game. Opened at 53. Since then has been bet up to 55. A pretty close 3-point spread as well. Like, this game has all the makings to be a shootout. Josh Allen, I know he's been bad lately. Like, he had a great stretch his first 4 weeks. 33, 37, 36, 25 DK points. Since then, he started to really trend down. 18, 16, 20, 13 DraftKings points. Had some tougher matchups, though. Like, not the best spots, honestly, but I think this is a week where Josh Allen's going to bounce back in a big way at home in a shootout against a really bad team, really bad defense, a really bad pass defense. I'm pretty sure the Seahawks have allowed the most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. If you really look into that, I think in terms of DK points allowed, they've allowed the most DK points to opposing QBs this season. It's just such a good spot for Josh Allen. We know this is a guy that has big time upside, has rushing upside as well. Like he can get 40, 50 rushing yards. If they get down to the goal line, they'll let Josh Allen punch it in. I like Josh Allen a lot at 7K on DraftKings. I think factoring in DraftKings pricing, Allen's my favorite quarterback to pay up for. I think looking at Yahoo pricing, I'd rather go to Mahomes for just $1 more. But, you can't go wrong with Josh Allen on Yahoo either. He's $35. Really, from Deshaun Watson up, like Wilson, Murray, Herbert, Mahomes, Allen, Watson, I think all these guys are in play. Really have nothing negative to say about any of them. They've all been so good this season. I know Allen's been trending down, but I think this is a week where he does bounce back in a big way. So that's just like my thoughts on the pay-up options. Now, looking to this mid-range, I do want to hit on Lamar Jackson. So he is someone that I've been playing recently in tournaments. I've had exposure to him. He's been pretty low owned. I think this is going to be another week where Lamar Jackson is very low owned. I do want to be overweight on him in tournaments. I think the upside is still there. This is still one of the highest upside QBs in the league, in my opinion. Still a guy that can go out there and, rush for 80, 90 yards, get you a rushing touchdown. Like, Lamar Jackson's one of the few guys that, if he only throws for 150 yards and a touchdown, you're like, wow, he really disappointed. But technically, he could throw for 150 yards and a touchdown and still give you over 20 DraftKings points because he can, run for 80 yards and a touchdown. Like, he just gives you so much upside through the ground. He ran 16 times last week against Pittsburgh, had a 100 rushing yard game against Philly. Like, he's definitely been trending up in terms of, rushing attempts, just his rushing ability overall, or his rushing games overall. 108 rushing yards against Philly, like I said, 65 against Pittsburgh. He did lose 2 fumbles last week, which kind of hurt him. You take away those 2 fumbles, and he finishes with 22 DK points. But I like Lamar a lot. I think at 6,900, his price just keeps coming down. I'm going to keep rostering him. I know the matchup against the Colts is not the best spot on paper. Colts have a solid defense, but I think Lamar, just given his rushing ability, is one of the more matchup-proof guys in the league. He's not a guy that has to throw for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns to hit his ceiling because, he can give you so much on the ground. So, honestly, between Lamar and Justin Herbert, this might be a hot take, but I do prefer Lamar this week. I think Herbert's going to be higher owned. I think Lamar has just as much upside. I think really everyone's jumping off ship on Lamar, and that's the time when I want to be on him. I want to be overweight on him in tournaments when everyone's jumping off. So still really like Lamar, especially with the price tag coming down. It's also coming down on Yahoo. I think he looks really good on Yahoo. He's only $31, same price as Matt Ryan. I'd take Lamar Jackson all day over Matt Ryan. But then just in this 6K range, not much here that stands out. Like, I think Ben's in a good spot against Dallas, but, Ben Roethlisberger doesn't have much upside. We haven't seen him really put up a ceiling game this season. If it were to come, I think it probably would come this week. Dallas has been so bad defensively overall, against the run, against the pass, it hasn't really mattered. They haven't been able to slow down anyone. I just feel like, if I can find the salary, I'd probably rather play Lamar Jackson or Justin Herbert over Big Ben. I think Teddy Bridgewater at 6K is a guy I do have some interest in tournaments. I think he is going to be pretty low owned. I don't see many people going to Teddy Bridgewater, but I really like his pass catchers. I like Robby Anderson this week. I like DJ Moore. Definitely going to be looking to target those guys, especially in lineups where, maybe I have Mahomes. If I'm stacking Mahomes with Hill or Kelsey and I'm looking for a run back option, I'll definitely be looking to Anderson and DJ Moore. Even those 2 guys overall, I think are really good plays. So that's definitely going to put me on Teddy Bridgewater at 6K. Like I said, don't expect really anyone to be there. With the Panthers being such big dogs in this game, you would expect Teddy Bridgewater to be throwing a ton. This is most likely going to be a game where the Panthers are trailing. We might see Teddy Bridgewater throw the ball 35, 40 times this week. He's not normally a guy that does that, but game script is probably going to lean that way. Should be getting Christian McCaffrey back this week, so that's another weapon that Bridgewater has out of the backfield. I like him in tournaments at 6K. I think, at low ownership, he does have some upside here in a game that, has some shootout potential if the Panthers can manage to keep up with this Chiefs team. But then in terms of value at quarterback, there really isn't much value that I'm in love with. I think my favorite play under 6K is Drew Lock, 5,200 against the Falcons. Look, Drew Lock's not a guy you're going to feel comfortable rostering. He's really only had one good game this season, and it came last week against the Chargers. But, I mean, he's been in some pretty brutal matchups. Like, he had to go on the road to Pittsburgh, on the road against New England. They got destroyed by Kansas City. He did have a good game last week against the Chargers. Like, he's had some tough matchups this week or this season. Finally gets a really good spot in the Dome against Atlanta. I mean, this is another game that has some shootout potential, that does have a pretty high total, and very similar to the Seahawks. The Falcons have been another team that has been, very easy to throw on. I believe they've allowed the second most fantasy points to opposing QBs, just behind the Seahawks. Really good spot for Drew Lock. I think at 5,200, he's my favorite value at quarterback. If I'm looking for a cheap option, he's the guy that I like most in that 5K range. I think out of all the 5K quarterbacks, he probably gives me the most upside, just given his matchup. But that's probably it for quarterback. Let's go ahead and move on to the running back position. So Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, two guys over 8K. It looks like Christian McCaffrey is expected back this week. I'm recording this video on Friday, early Friday. Last report we got was that the coach, Matt Rule, came out and said that he expects, or he believes that McCaffrey will play. I'm assuming CMC does play this week. I have some interest in him at 8,500 just because 8,500 is too cheap for Christian McCaffrey. This is a guy that was priced at 10K in the first 2 weeks of the season when he was healthy. He's normally, priced around the 9,500, 10K range. Like, that's normally where we get CMC priced at. His price is down because, it's his first game back from injury. We don't really know what we're going to get, but if he's fully healthy, I mean, 8,500 is way too low for Christian McCaffrey. We know the usage is going to be there. I mean, maybe they ease him back a little bit in his first game, but if he is fully healthy, I think 20 touches is very likely for Christian McCaffrey. I know Mike Davis has been playing really well, and I think Mike Davis does get some involvement, but I don't think Mike Davis is going to be like a guy that steals work from McCaffrey. I think it's in his first game back. I'd probably say it's going to be like a 75-25 split between McCaffrey and Davis, and then as the season progresses, as McCaffrey starts to get more healthy, it's probably going to be like 80-20, 85-15, maybe even like 90-10 at some point. I mean, Mike Davis is good, but I don't expect him to really take many touches away from McCaffrey. I don't see him like stealing touchdowns from McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is still a really good play. I feel a little bit worried about him just because it is his first game back from injury, and since we have Dalvin Cook priced right below him, I think I do prefer to go to Dalvin Cook. It is a great spot for Dalvin Cook at home against the Lions. The Lions are a team that you can definitely look to take opposing running backs against. They have really struggled against the run this season. Cook's coming off a monster game where he put up 51 DK points against Green Bay, had 4 touchdowns in that game, 163 rushing yards, and 2 catches for 63 yards and a receiving touchdown as well. Like, in terms of usage, overall workload, I mean, there's no one in the league. I would say CMC and Dalvin Cook are like the two guys that, have 30-plus touch upside every week. We could see, I don't know if CMC is going to get like 30 touches in his first game back from injury, but later on the season, I mean, we know Christian McCaffrey, he'll get 20, 22 carries, 4, 5, 6 targets. Dalvin Cook's the same way. Last week, 30 carries, 3 targets. I mean, when this guy's healthy, he's one of the best running backs in the league. He's one of the most explosive running backs in the league. He has the most upside as well. At home, in the Dome, 8,200. Little expensive, but I think Dalvin Cook is a really good play. The only reason I'm not going to include him in like my early core plays is just because these mid-range options I really, really like. James Robinson, James Conner, Chase Edmonds, 3 guys I have a ton of interest in this week. But if I can find the salary to get up to Dalvin Cook, I think he is a very strong play. I think, if we get some value, maybe, I don't know if that's going to happen, but if we somehow get some value, then Dalvin Cook does become a priority for me. But for now, I think the mid-range is where I really am looking. James Robinson, James Conner, Chase Edmonds, the 3 guys I mentioned. So starting off with James Robinson, at home against Houston, really good spot for him. This Houston team, another team I've really looked to take opposing running backs against this season. I believe they've allowed the most rushing yards per game, or second most rushing yards per game this year. I'm pretty sure they're only behind Green Bay. Robinson, he's coming off a good game against the Chargers where he got 22 carries and 4 receptions, got a big workload, did find the end zone twice in that game. I'm a little bit worried with Jacksonville having a backup quarterback here. Gardner Minshew has been ruled out. I think there are some concerns that maybe Houston kind of gets up early in this game. But James Robinson is one of those guys I'm not too worried about game script. If they're playing with a lead, James Robinson is going to be out there. If they're playing from behind, he'll still be out there catching passes. He is very involved in the passing game. He does have a very secure workload no matter what the game script is. I think given matchup and just overall upside, I feel a little bit better about James Conner and Chase Edmonds, and we'll talk about them in a second. But James Robinson is definitely a very strong play. If you want to, if you're 3 running backs this week, if you want to play Robinson, Connor, and Edmonds as your 3 running backs, I have no problems with that at all. I just think if I can only choose between 2 of these 3 guys, I think I'm definitely going to have 2 of these 3 in my main lineup. Connor and Edmonds right now are my 2 favorites. Connor, 6,900 against Dallas. Just a really, really good matchup, man. I mean, Dallas, they've been so bad this season, both against the run and the pass. The Steelers are huge favorites here, so if they get up with the lead, we should see a lot of James Conner, especially late in the game, just feeding him the rock. They're 14-point favorites right now. This game doesn't have the highest total, but I think that's just due to the fact that the Cowboys only have a 14 implied team total. I mean, Vegas has no respect for the Cowboys here. I mean, they really shouldn't, because the Cowboys have just been so bad this season. Without Dak, they're without Andy Dalton as well. It's either going to be Cooper Rush or Garrett Gilbert starting for the Cowboys on Sunday. It's hard to have faith in many Cowboys players here. But on the Steelers side, I mean, there's a lot of guys I have interest in from the Steelers. James Conner is definitely one of them. I think he's one of my favorite running backs overall this week. We know the volume's going to be there. Going to get 15 to 20 carries, probably even more than that if they're playing with a lead. If somehow they get behind, which is unlikely, but if somehow they get behind, I mean, James Conner will still be involved in the passing game. We know if they get down to the goal line, he's most likely going to be the guy punching it in. I mean, I'm pretty sure he scored a touchdown in every game but 2 this season. Week 1, I'm not really counting that because I believe he did get hurt early in that game, but didn't score Week 7 against Tennessee, but he scored a touchdown every week except that one. I mean, he's pretty much a lock for, I would say, close to 100 yards rushing, probably going to get into the end zone once, if not twice. He'll get a few catches as well. 6,900, the price came up, but I think James Conner is in a great spot this week. He's one of my favorite running backs overall, both on Draftkings and Yahoo. He is very affordable on Yahoo, just $26. Really, really like him over there. And then Chase Edmonds, the other guy that I have a lot of interest in this week. We've already got news that, Kenyon Drake not going to be out there for this game. Most likely going to be out this game and maybe even next week as well. I think Chase Edmonds has the chance to, kind of take over this Cardinals backfield. I think if he plays really well on Sunday, which is likely, that there's a chance even when Kenyon Drake comes back from injury that he's going to be the backup to Chase Edmonds. I think Chase Edmonds, honestly, he should be the Cardinals starting running back. He's just been better than Drake this season. He's been way more explosive. He's a guy that when he gets touches can be very efficient. We've seen that so far this season, even last week against Seattle or the week before that. 5 carries, 58 yards, 7 catches, 87 yards. I mean, this guy just has so much upside. They'll use him in the passing game as well. I don't know if he's going to get 20 carries and 6 targets. I don't know if he's going to get that kind of usage, but I think 12 to 15 carries, 4 to 6 targets is definitely in his range of outcomes. I think if they get down to the goal line that, if Kyler's not running it in, it's probably going to be Chase Edmonds running it in. At 6,800 against the Dolphins, another team that's been very easy to run on this season. I like Chase Edmonds a lot. I think the upside is through the roof, especially since we don't have to worry about Drake taking away touches from him. They have some other guys to back up Edmonds, but I do expect Edmonds to be, the clear number 1 and to get the large majority of touches and snaps at running back. So I like him a lot on both sides as well. I think, Edmonds, Conner, Robinson, these are definitely some of my favorite plays at running back. I'm really looking to that mid-range. I think, that's where I really have the most interest at the position this week. Can't go wrong with CMC or Dalvin Cook, but these mid-range options look very appealing to me, just given the savings that you get dropping down from CMC and Cook. But then there's some other guys, you could consider for tournaments that are going to be lower owned, like Josh Jacobs. I never have a problem with. I think I'd rather play Conner and Edmonds, but Jacobs is fine to go to in tournaments. In this 5K range, I think Antonio Gibson's fine to go to at 5,800. He seems to have secured that, Washington backfield. He's getting all the touches, 20 touches last week. A guy that they'll use both in the passing game and in the running game. I think he's going to be very low owned, so you could definitely look there in tournaments. David Johnson against the Jaguars, I like that matchup a lot. David Johnson only 5,600. I could definitely see going to him. But then in terms of value, there's not much value at running back this week, but there are 2 guys I want to hit on at 4,900. First off, Justin Jackson against the Raiders. I do like Justin Jackson this week. With Austin Eckler out, I mean, he's kind of been the number 1 running back for the Chargers. They will involve Joshua Kelly. They involved Traymon Pope last week, but Jackson's been leading the team in touches. Led the team in touches last week, got 20 touches, 17 carries, and 3 receptions. Week 5 against New Orleans, got 15 carries and 5 receptions. Wasn't as involved Week 7 against Jacksonville, but I think most weeks with Eckler out, or while Eckler is still out, you're most likely going to see Justin Jackson lead the running back, like the three running backs. He's going to lead those three in touches. It seems like he's their preferred guy, the guy they do want to give, the most volume to. It's still an iffy situation because they have Kelly and they have Pope, and I think both those two guys will most likely get some touches. But I think if I have to choose one of the three Chargers running backs, I do prefer Justin Jackson. I think the upside is there. He hasn't scored yet, but if he can find the end zone, there is definitely a path to a ceiling game for Justin Jackson. Last week, he had 17 carries for 89 yards, 3 catches for 53 yards. Still finished, he finished with 17 DraftKings points. If he finds the end zone, he's going to finish with over 20 DK points. Against the Raiders, really, really good matchup. I definitely like Justin Jackson as a value running back. I think he makes a lot of sense at 4,900. And then if Mark Ingram's out again, last update we got that I recall was that Ingram was out Thursday's practice. We haven't gotten Friday's practice reports yet. I'm recording this video, like I said, on Friday, early Friday morning. But J.K. Dobbins last week without Mark Ingram did get 15 carries for 113 yards. He was also kind of involved in the passing game. Got 2 targets, 1 reception for 8 yards. If Ingram's out again, I think J.K. Dobbins we can definitely look to for 4,900. An explosive guy out of college, out of Ohio State. Looked really good in college. Has shown some upside this season when given the opportunity, when given the touches. And I would expect the opportunity to be there as long as Ingram's out. It's not the best matchup against the Colts. The Colts have a very solid run defense. They have a really good defense overall. But Dobbins is still cheap. The touches should be there as long as Ingram's out. Between him or Jackson, I think I feel better about Justin Jackson, but I don't mind J.K. Dobbins either. If you want to go to either one of those guys as a cheap option at running back, I think both are playable this week. But let's go ahead and move on to the wide receiver position. So at wide receiver, just talking about the guys like 7K and above, you can really never go wrong with any of the expensive receivers. They all have a ton of upside. They're all going to get plenty of volume. I think if I have to choose a 2 or 3 of my favorites, I think Stefon Diggs, especially because I like Josh Allen so much. Stefon Diggs is definitely my favorite pay-up option. 7,400 on DK, somewhat affordable there. Looking at Yahoo's pricing, $31 on Yahoo. If I'm looking to stack up Allen with someone, it's definitely going to be Stefon Diggs. He's just been so good this season, been so consistent. Double-digit DraftKings points in every game, getting good volume every single week. Has the potential to get 10, 12, 13 targets, maybe even more if they're playing from behind. We know the Seattle defense, their secondary, just their pass defense overall has been so bad this season. There's a lot of upside for Stefon Diggs this week. I think at 7,400, he's one of my preferred pay-up options at receiver. I do prefer him over Julio, prefer him over DK Metcalf as well. I think Tyreek Hill looks appealing in tournaments. If you want to stack him up with Patrick Mahomes, you could always look to do that. Yahoo, though, I think that's where Tyreek Hill looks the most appealing. You have to scroll down a good amount to find Tyreek Hill. He's all the way down here at $24. Same price tag as Allen Robinson, cheaper than A.J. Brown, cheaper than Justin Jefferson, cheaper than Keenan Allen, Thielen. I love Tyreek Hill on Yahoo. I think Mahomes is a little bit too cheap, so I'm definitely going to be looking to stack up Mahomes with Tyreek Hill on Yahoo, just given how cheap Hill is. This guy's been as good as it gets this season. He's been over 13 fantasy points in every game but one. He scored a touchdown in every game but one this season. Only game where he didn't score a touchdown was against Buffalo, and I believe that was week 6 or week 7. I can't remember. But besides that game against Buffalo, Tyreek Hill has been incredibly consistent this season, pretty much giving you a floor of 10 to 12 fantasy points. We know he has a big-time ceiling. We saw that last week against the Jets with 4 catches for 98 yards and 2 touchdowns. We know if they get down to the goal line, they'll let Tyreek Hill kind of run it in on an end around. They're running a lot of those pitch out plays or the sweep plays where Mahomes will kind of touch pass it to Tyreek Hill. They're doing a lot of that stuff near the goal line in the red zone, which is allowing Tyreek Hill to score more. We obviously know that he is always a deep ball threat, a big play threat. This Carolina secondary, like I said, they've been better than I expected, but they still really don't have any elite shutdown corners. They have Deontay Johnson, who is really, really fast and probably can keep up with Tyreek Hill to some extent, but Hill's one of the more unguardable players one-on-one. He's just so quick, so explosive. I think at $24 on Yahoo, he's one of my favorite receivers overall at that really cheap price tag. On DraftKings at 7,100, probably just going to go there in tournaments. I think in cash games, if I was going to pay up a receiver, I'd probably rather play Stefon Diggs or even Keenan Allen. But in tournaments, you can always stack up Mahomes and Hill. At $24 on Yahoo, though, I think Tyreek Hill is definitely going to be in cash game consideration for me, just because he's way too cheap over there. But Keenan Allen, the price tag's coming up, but the guy's just getting massive volume, double-digit targets in every game so far this season with Justin Herbert at quarterback. The only game where he didn't get double-digit targets was against New Orleans, and that was because he got hurt very early on in the game and did not return. You take out that game, and every game with Herbert at quarterback, he's getting double-digit targets. The volume's going to be there. The price tag coming up, but still, Keenan Allen has the upside. We saw him get into the end zone last week, put up over 20 Draftkings points. This is a guy that can go out there and get 8 catches for 120 yards and a touchdown. Like, he's got 25, 30-point upside. I think between Hill and Allen, I think Allen's the safer play. I think both guys give you plenty of upside. But when you look at Yahoo's pricing, given how cheap Tyreek Hill is over there, I'd rather go to Tyreek Hill. But now in the 6K range, I think there's some plays I do have interest in here as well. I think Tyler Lockett is my preferred Seattle receiver to go to this week between him and DK Metcalf, especially because Metcalf is $1,000 more. Like, I would just rather save and play Tyler Lockett. Lockett gets a pretty favorable matchup. Buffalo has been pretty bad against slot receivers this season, and we know Lockett, he'll move around like all over the field, but he's mainly their slot receiver. I assume Tre'Davious White, I know he's been banging or dealing with some injuries, but I'm assuming he plays. Assuming he does play, then I assume he probably shadows DK Metcalf or is going to be on DK Metcalf a lot, which should make it a much better matchup for Lockett. It seems like whenever one goes off, the other one goes off the next week. DK Metcalf had a big game last week, so I could see this definitely being a Lockett week. I mean, I don't really have anything to any stats to go by that, but I mean, it does seem like whenever Lockett has a big game, DK Metcalf has a big game next week, and then vice versa. Whenever Metcalf has a big game, Lockett has a big game the week after that. I think just between the two, whether you believe in that or not, it's definitely Lockett for me between Metcalf and Lockett. Like, I'd just rather save the salary. I think Lockett has the upside. I like that he's going to be playing in the slot a lot, which, is where Buffalo does struggle. So definitely like Tyler Lockett at 6,800. I think Will Fuller looks really good as well at 6,800. I mean, Will Fuller's just been so good this season. 100 yards or a touchdown in every game but one. And, the game where he didn't do that, he got hurt against Baltimore. Just been so consistent. Double-digit DraftKings points in pretty much every game this season. Against Jacksonville, when they played in Week 5, had a solid game, 4 catches, 58 yards, and a touchdown. Look, there may be a little bit of a narrative here. He was on the trade block, supposedly. He was going to get traded to Green Bay, but that didn't happen. So maybe he wants to come out and show that, you shouldn't have traded me. I'm still an elite receiver, which I think Will Fuller is. I think this is definitely a number one receiver. Probably would be a number one receiver for almost every team except a few. But I really like Will Fuller at 6,800. I think if you want to stack him up with, Deshaun Watson and then maybe run it back with James Robinson, that is something you could definitely look to do in tournaments. I do want to talk about Will Fuller on Yahoo. He is very affordable over there, kind of similar to Tyreek Hill. Like, he's another guy that's just too cheap in my opinion. $23 for Will Fuller, just way too cheap overall. So really like Diggs, Tyreek Hill, Lockett, Fuller. I think those are kind of my favorite spend up options at receiver. Tyreek Hill on Yahoo, definitely like him over there. Keenan Allen as well, you could look to. But then going a little bit cheaper, I talked about how I like the Carolina receivers this week. Robby Anderson, 6,300. DJ Moore, 5,600. I have interest in both guys. I think on DraftKings, if I can only choose one, I'd probably rather play DJ Moore to save the salary, save the $700. But if we look at Yahoo's pricing, both Anderson and Moore are only $19. I think both guys are really good plays, but because they're the same salary, I do prefer to go to Robby Anderson. And since we stacked up Mahomes with Tyreek Hill, might as well look to run it back from someone on the Carolina side. Like I said earlier, I think this game has a lot of shootout potential if the Panthers can put up points and keep it close. The Chiefs' defense has been really good this season, so it's not like a great matchup for Anderson or these receivers or really Bridgewater in general. I just expect Carolina to be throwing a ton. I think the volume is definitely going to be there. Anderson's probably going to get double-digit targets this week. He's led the team in targets this season. He's been the safer play between him and DJ Moore. Both guys give you the upside. I mean, DJ Moore's kind of shown more upside, more big play ability so far than Robby Anderson has, but I feel a little bit better about Anderson just because I think his target volume is more secure. He's been the number one receiver for Carolina. I like him a lot at $19. I think both him and DJ Moore look like really good plays, but if I can only choose one, I probably would rather go with Robby Anderson. I'm definitely going to be stacking up Mahomes and Hill on Yahoo and then looking to run it back with Robby Anderson. Might even do that in my main lineup just because of how affordable, all those guys are, how underpriced they all are. So definitely like that pairing. on Yahoo, on Draftkings, Anderson 6,300, Morse 5,600. I think both are in play, but if I can only choose one, probably would rather go with DJ Moore at 5,600. But then other plays in the 5K range, I do want to mention Marvin Jones. So at 5,100, he's a guy that I have a lot of interest in this week. With Detroit, without Matthew Stafford, that is pretty big. I mean, I'm assuming Chase Daniel is going to start at quarterback. That's obviously a pretty big hit for Marvin Jones, but we do know that Kenny Golladay is going to be out for this game, so Marvin Jones is going to step in as their number one receiver. This Minnesota secondary is not one I'm concerned with at all. They've been really bad this season. They're running out a bunch of rookies. We saw them get cooked by the Packers last week. Devontae Adams had a really big game, 3 touchdowns. Obviously, Marvin Jones doesn't have nearly the upside that Devontae Adams does, but this is still a guy that has shown, upside in the past and somewhat this season. Is coming off a game against the Colts last week where he did find the end zone twice, 3 catches, 39 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Look, I like the matchup. I think with no Kenny Golladay, that improves his target floor. I think most weeks, Jones probably gets 5, 6, 7 targets. I think he has the chance to get maybe 8, 9, possibly even 10 targets this week, depending on how game script flows. This could be a game where Detroit is playing from behind. We could see Minnesota get a lead. So I like Marvin Jones a lot at 5,100. I think the upside's there without Kenny Golladay. I don't see many people going to him either because, he hasn't really been that good this season. We saw earlier this year when Golladay was out, like Marvin Jones really didn't do anything, but those were 2 tough spots. Golladay was out weeks 1 and 2 against Chicago and Green Bay. Those were tougher matchups. This is a much better matchup this week against Minnesota. I know Stafford's going to be out, but I still think Chase Daniel will find a way to get Marvin Jones the ball. At 5,100, I like him a lot at that DK price. I think, he's definitely one of my preferred options in the 5K range. And then another guy that I like in the 5K range is Deontay Johnson. I know we already have James Conner, but I have no problems playing Conner and Johnson together. I think both guys can easily pay off their price tags. I think, both guys have path to ceiling games as well. We've seen Deontay Johnson when healthy this season. The guy has massive upside. Week 7 against Tennessee, 15 targets, 9 catches, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns. Week 2 against Denver, 13 targets, 8 catches, 92 yards, and a touchdown. Look, he's been dealing with injuries all season. He got hurt week 3, got hurt week 5. I think he played most of the game last week against Baltimore, but he did get hurt towards the end. Assuming he plays the full game and he doesn't somehow get injured yet again, Deontay Johnson is a great play at only 5K against a really bad Dallas secondary, just a really bad Dallas defense overall. Like I said earlier, this is a Dallas team I've picked on all season. Whether it's running backs, receivers, quarterbacks, it doesn't really matter. Their defense is just so bad. It's a great spot for all these Steelers guys. Whether you want to go with Connor, Deontay, Juju, even Eric Ebron, I think all are in play for me. But factoring in the salaries, I think James Conner, 6,900, Deontay Johnson, 5K. Those are my favorite plays from the Steelers this week, and those are the guys I'm most likely going to have the most exposure to from that team. But if we're talking about value at receiver under 5K, there isn't much value that I love. I think if you want to take a shot on these Dallas guys, like I mentioned them in my first look video, I think CeeDee Lamb is only, he's only 4,900. Michael Gallup is really cheap. Michael Gallup's only 4K. I think you would definitely look to both these guys. If you have faith in either Gilbert or Cooper Rush, whichever one gets to start, I think I could see, both. I wouldn't say both, but one of these guys, one of these Dallas receivers is going to have a decent game. Like one of them's going to score. One of them's probably going to put up 15, 20 DK points. If I can only play one Dallas receiver, I think Michael Gallup is my favorite. He's only 4K. He's coming off a game where he got 12 targets, 7 catches for 61 yards. Obviously, Ben DiNucci started that game. It's not going to be DiNucci this week. It's either going to be Rush or Gilbert. But, Dallas is at home where they tend to play a little bit better. I know their offense, this week is not nearly the same offense that it was before, but this is a Dallas team that does play better offensively when they're at home. They seem to, just put up more points at home. They're going to be playing from behind, you would expect. They're 14-point dogs. We should see them just throwing a ton late in the game. I think the targets should be there for Michael Gallup. We know he's pretty much an every down receiver. He's going to be on the field for almost every snap. It's a tough matchup without a doubt against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has one of the best defenses overall, one of the best secondaries overall, but Dallas is just going to have to throw the ball a ton. They're going to have to find a way to put up points. They're not going to be able to just run the ball. They're going to get down most likely. They're going to be playing from behind. I think the targets will be there, and at only 4K, I think Gallup does give us some upside and some safety at that salary. If I'm going cheap at receiver, I think he's my favorite option at 4K. Darnell Mooney's coming off a big game last week. If you wanted to go to him at 3,900, I wouldn't mind that either. Got 6 targets, 5 catches, 69 yards, and a touchdown. He's always a guy that, has upside, shows big playability, is an explosive receiver. So you could definitely look there as a cheap play for 3,900. Like Marvin Hall should be replacing Kenny Galladay. He's going to see more time on the field. Did get 7 targets last week, 4 catches, 113 yards. If you want to play Marvin Hall, I don't think that's the worst value play. If I can only play one Lions receiver, I'd rather go to Marvin Jones, but Hall is also a cheap option. Should get way more time on the field this week with Kenny Galladay out. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for receiver value. Let's go ahead and hit on the tight end position just real quick before we do end the video. So at the top of the tight end position, you have Travis Kelce. I say it every week. Kelce's a great play. If you can pay up for him, by all means, go ahead. If you want to stack him with Mahomes in tournaments, I have no problems with that. I just don't think, in my main lineup in cash games, I don't think I'm going to be able to pay up at tight end. It's usually always a position I look to go cheap at. I like the expensive quarterbacks this week. I like the mid-range and expensive running backs. I'm going to have to go cheap somewhere. So tight end's a position where I will be looking to save some salary. Noah Fant, I think, is probably my favorite value on DraftKings. He's only 4,600. Love the matchup against the Falcons. I believe the Falcons have allowed the most fantasy points or the most DK points to opposing tight ends this season. Noah Fant, we know, is going to get the volume. I mean, you look at his last 4 games, 10, 6, 7, and 9 targets. This game has shootout potential. There's a chance Denver gets behind. They're going to have to throw. I just think there's definitely a path to a ceiling game for Noah Fant. He hasn't put up a ceiling game yet this season. He did have some good games weeks 1 and 2, 19 and 17 DK points. Eventually Noah Fant's going to have a 7 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown kind of game, and I think it maybe could come this week in a really good matchup against the Falcons. So he's my favorite value tight end at 4,600 on DK. Now on Yahoo, I think there's other guys I'd probably look to. I mean, Fant is kind of priced up over there. He's $21. If I'm going to pay that much, I'd just rather try and get up to Kelce if I can. But talking about Yahoo pricing, I do want to hit on Evan Ingram. I think he's a good play on both sides, but Yahoo, he is really cheap over there. He's only $12. He's one of the cheapest tight ends on the board overall, not factoring in the minimum salary guys. At $12, I mean, I'm going to keep playing Evan Ingram at this cheap price tag. The guy gets the volume. Last 2 weeks, he's got 19 targets. Look, I know he hasn't really done anything this season. He's yet to put up more than 10 fantasy points, factoring in Yahoo scoring, but he's kind of ran bad in terms of touchdowns. He's had some touchdowns called off. He's dropped some passes as well. I like the matchup against Washington. This is a team that, does struggle to tight ends, a team you can definitely beat with opposing tight ends. And Ingram is still one of the most athletic tight ends in the league, still one of the best receiving tight ends in the league. At $12, he's my favorite value on Yahoo. He's most likely going to be the guy I build around in my main lineup. I just think he's too cheap. I think the upside is still there. I think the volume is going to be there. And that's really all that I can ask for when you're coming in at just $12. So DraftKings, I like Noah Fant the most at 4,600. On Yahoo, I think Evan Ingram's my favorite guy at $12. But if you want to play Hayden Hurst, Hunter Henry, I don't have problems with either one of those guys either. Both guys are probably going to get anywhere from 6 to 8 targets, going to be on the field a ton. I mean, Hurst is pretty much an every down tight end or close to it. Henry going to be on the field a ton as well. Both guys are in play for value. If you're looking for more players for cheap tight ends, just overall Fant, Ingram, Hurst, Henry, I think those are my 4 favorite values at the position. But yeah, guys, I think we covered tight end. I think we broke everything down, quarterback through tight end, talked about all my favorite plays at each position. So hope you guys did enjoy this video. I hope you did. You got something out of it. Hopefully it was useful. If you enjoyed, hit that like button down below before you do get out of here. Hit the subscribe button as well. Be sure to click that notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. And if you have not yet, if you want to check out my exclusive Patreon content, it's linked down below in the description. If you are interested, it's obviously optional, but if you're interested, the Patreon content is linked down below for those of you that are interested. But best of luck this week, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Go win some money this week. Good luck. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.